So I'm finally back out into my shop, and I'm going to start making some box joints. And to do that, while I'm waiting for my light to start so I can actually see, I'm going to clear some stuff off my workbench. Off my table saw. Got my mouth fixed. Now my tongue doesn't work, or vice versa. Anyway, taking stuff away from working on my truck, which will become, I hope, another video. So to do this work, I don't know if you can see, here's my table saw. Pretty hard to cut a box joint with a regular blade of that nature, and the fence is in the way, so we're going to slide the fence out of the way, hopefully far enough. We're going to lift my zero clearance insert out, and we're going to take, if I can get this thing to show you, take that blade off, and we're going to replace it with a dado blade. Anyway, I don't know how well that showed up. I'm going to set up the camera on the tripod, and I'll show you the setup for the dado blade and the removal of this blade, and then my special jig for making box joints. If you are a YouTuber, you've probably seen these things before. I made mine. I'll explain it to you. Anyway, I'll be right back as soon as I set up the camera. Okay, to start with, I'm going to dig out my dado blade, wipe some of the dust off of it, and get them opened up here. Now, actually, before I do that, let me, I believe it's this fancy device here. Yes, so I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit so you can see down here. You won't be able to see my head, but you don't want to see that anyway. Okay, so what we have to do is raise our blade as high as it'll go. And put a piece of wood on there so that it doesn't just turn everything. Loosen that off. Take our big nut out, being careful not to drop it down into the sawdust bin because it's hard to find when it goes in there. Big washer, and carefully, so that you don't hit the teeth on metal, take the big blade out, the big cutting blade. Have a place to hang it right here, which I'm going to do. You probably can't see that, but I hung it up. Okay, it is cold out here. I should have put a fire on. First things first, outside blade of the dado goes on the saw. Then you'll notice that I have some shims, and each of them, in this case, I've marked with a 1/4. So I need all of these shims in order to make the spacing exactly the way I want it to be, so that my dado creates a 1/4 inch cut through the wood. And it doesn't matter what order these go on in this case, because I'm not using any of the chipper blades. I'm only making a 1/4 inch dado, and technically the teeth on these saws are 1/8 wide. So technically, if I put the two of them together, they should make a 1/4 inch cut, but they don't, because when you put them together, you have to be very careful that the teeth don't touch one another any more than is absolutely necessary. And so to get a 1/4 inch cut, you can see there's a slight space between, in order that the teeth don't pass each other. Anyway, my experience and the marks that I've got on there tell me that that should make me a 1/4 inch cut. If I'm making a thicker cut, I don't know if you can see this over here, I have a whole lot more shims, and these are what are called chipper teeth, and they're thinner. They're about 3/16 of an inch thick, and they go between these blades to just chip out pieces, and there's a variety of them. Some of them are thicker, some of them are thinner, and you stack them up. That's why it's called a stacking dado. You stack them up in order to create the thickness of the cut you desire, and the spacers are used to do exactly what I've done here, to give you infinite, almost variety, if you will, in the thickness of the cut. So I'm going to put the nut back on there carefully so that I don't drop it into the sawdust. And I'm going to put on a glove. The reason for the glove is these are very sharp and I don't want to cut myself. I don't want to use a piece of wood either though, because really it doesn't have to be very tight, just tight enough to actually hold things, and a finger grip on it is tight enough to make it tight enough that we can actually make a cut. So now I'll get some of this stuff off of here. And we'll bring up my dado jig. So this is my dado jig. I don't know if you can, how well you can see it. Now this saw will have to be lowered back down, and it will have to be lowered to a very precise depth, because I don't want to waste any more of these side pieces or any top and bottom pieces than I have to. Down you go. Now, some of you have probably already figured this out, but the way this works, I don't know if, can you see? Put my other glove on, my hands are cold. Should have started a fire. In fact, I might yet. At any rate, I don't know how much you can see. This is a 16 thread per inch threaded rod. Now, 1/16 of an inch is very positive, very good increments to use, and because generally speaking here I'm making a 1/4 inch notch every 1/2 inch to make a box end. And actually before I actually use these pieces, which are going to be the pieces that I use, I'm going to make a practice run just to show you and to verify for myself, because it's been a little while since I've used my machine here, that I want to verify for myself that it's actually cutting the way I want it to cut. This piece here, I'll use it, it's kind of a mess. It's just a piece of card of 2x4 that has been cut off. And you know, I might eventually make a box out of scraps like that. These are other test pieces that I've done in times past. I'm going to cut this, well, let's see, cut it at that length right there. Now this piece here is a piece of scrap stuff too, and I use it as a sacrificial piece, and it prevents tear out on the back side, excuse me, on the back side of the cut. Those teeth are fairly aggressive, and so as they cut through, they tear things off. And if you have another piece of wood behind there, you have what's called a sacrificial piece, and I'm going to save that piece for when I'm actually making my cut. I don't care too much about this particular piece of wood. And I also want to make sure that I have a 1/4 inch spacer here somewhere. Where'd he go? There he is. Is he thick enough for my pieces of wood? No, not quite. I'm going to lay one of these in here. No, I can't. It's too long. 1 second, I have a shorter piece. Here's a piece of wood that got cut off of these. I'm going to use him to verify the exact thickness, or depth, I'm sorry, of my cut. And I'm just a little bit proud, a little bit tall. There. Very good. And that's clamped in there. And move those things over a little bit. This says I'm setting on 0, so I'm going to try it. So a small explanation. I don't know if you can see the crank and everything here, can you? Yes, you can. Okay. So I have a crank on this end, and on this end I have a round piece with a flat spot on it and a flapper stick. And so what I can do now is each turn of the crank equals 1/16 of an inch. Understand? So I want a 1/4 inch gap, which I just made. And I want to have a tooth and then another 1/4 inch gap. So I'm going to count on my crank and watch on my ruler here to get the correct spacing. I want to move the carriage on my machine over this way 1/2 an inch. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you notice that my flapper wheel is back flat on there again. I've moved my carriage 1/2 of an inch. 8 turns on the crank. That 1/16 of an inch per turn equals 1/2 inch. So now we'll make another cut. Another 8 turns. Inches. And I don't even need to make that cut, because if I look down through there I can see my notch. So I'm actually finished making that cut. So let's open it up and see what we got. notice that we suddenly have turned that into a piece with notches cut out of it. And I made a mistake. See, it's why I test these things out. I'm out by a 1/16 of an inch at my first cut. That's okay for these pieces though. I can try to remember that. And look at that, the pieces fit together. They're not deep enough on the first piece. Maybe they are on this end. Yes, they are. Look at that. It's supposed to be. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make at least one cut on this to verify for myself that I actually have moved it to the correct starting position. And man, that's one crooked piece of wood that I got in there. Anyway, and then we'll put our actual work pieces in and we'll try cutting them. Okay. See a lot of tear out on this, right? And that looks like it's okay.